Welcome back, listeners, to another very interesting episode on the BizPlan podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and I want you to picture this in your mind. You have made hundreds of calls. You have heard no so many times. Some of them may have blocked your numbers, disconnected the call, or you just sent a voicemail to them. Now, so many times doing this, the word itself, it loses meaning. And yet you keep going on and on and on. What does it take to dial again after rejection number 495? What does it mean to believe that the very next call might just change everything? It has happened with me, listeners. So, my guest today, he knows that story firsthand. What started with just one person, a phone, a sheer persistence, turned into landing Zappos.com as their first big client and eventually building Indigo Promotions into partner for names like MGM Resorts, Bloomberg, and MAC Cosmetics. Some biggies right there, right, listeners? But this isn't just a story about sales, it's about grit, frustration turned into innovation, and how one breakthrough moment can reroute the entire trajectory of a business. So let's sit together in the moment of tension and possibility and dive into the story behind the call that changed it all. So, listeners, meet my incredible guest, Ethan Dowie. So, Ethan, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really excited for this conversation.
Santa, I'm ready to run through a brick wall after that introduction. What a great intro. That's awesome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Super, super. Ethan, oh my goodness, it brings back so many memories in there. Um, 50, 100 calls every day just for that, one meeting or demo or discovery call to be booked. So many voice calls, many people threatening, if you call me once again, I'll block you or you are invading my privacy. That was fun. That was fun, but yet, yes, at the same time, very frustrating, very frustrating. And it definitely needs a lot of grit and resilience in there. So, respect to you, Ethan. And 495 calls, that's huge. Let's say if I do 100 calls every day, five, an entire week, maybe I'm just guessing. And 495 calls went nowhere before Zappos said yes on the 496th. What was the feeling in there? What kept you going on and on, instead of giving up?
Well, it's so funny because to bring everyone back to year one, day one of Indigo, which was February in 2021, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, it wasn't like I was coming from this spot of I had all these merch ideas and I knew what I was doing in merchandise and I knew how to grow a business and I knew how to manage employees. I didn't know anything. So to me, I just kind of sat back and said, okay, I have this business now. And step one to me is to get clients, even before I even know what I'm doing. So I was kind of just on autopilot. And in my mind, for some reason, that was the step one to start this thing off, to kick this thing off and get it going. So I just was finding numbers. I was dialing them. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have a script. I was kind of just going off of the dome. So it's not like I was doing anything structured or right. I was hoping that after a bunch of calls, I would just kind of figure out what worked, what didn't work, and how I could almost chisel away at people and finally get to a point where I sounded educated in my space and like I knew what I was doing. And it truly did take 495 calls to finally get to one where I was like, hold on, I feel good right now. Like I know what to say. I'm kind of feeling them out a little bit. And when I finally did to get to that cold call where I called Zappos and I got through and I get a contact number and I get an email, I was just like, wow, like I did it. And I always say people have like a it's over type moment in their story of business building. That was really mine because it was the first bit of success that we had where it was just it was all positive and it was a step in the right direction.
Superb. So, and another feeling, which is because I've personally gone through this. So I think it's very common that when you kind of keep on getting rejection or failure after call by call by call, you start to judge yourself. That am I not doing this right? Am I even in the right place? Is this supposed to happen? I think, and that sense of judgment and failure, it kind of consumes you from inside out. So uh, did these kind of thoughts come into your mind, when you got so many rejections doing those 495 calls?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think I am fortunate that I was very okay. I was very real with where I was at. Like I knew that I think it would have been worse if I was coming from from a spot in my career of, like, knowing everything, because then the calls not getting through and not getting to anybody would have impacted me more, but I looked at it as, "Okay, I'm kind of a rookie in this industry, I don't really know my stuff, so, yeah, I have to be slapped around a little bit by people." So, it kinda just gave me an excuse to fail and to be
Mm.
okay with not achieving anything for that first entire 6 months, 5 months, whatever you wanna call it. So, I think being able to sit back and not taking yourself too seriously and just being like, "Hey, stuff happens. I don't have to be perfect every day or good at this yet." And just knowing that you're eventually gonna get better, that's a very powerful mindset tool right there, no matter what business you're in. And, I use it to this day. I still cold call people when I have the time. I still cold email people and set up all these campaigns, and we still get people who say like, "We're not interested," and, kick rocks. And now that I've heard it so many times, it's like just second nature to just kind of take that in and it make sure it goes out the other ear. But starting out, it's definitely harder to do that. And I think not taking yourself seriously is step one there to make sure you don't get too affected by it.
Yeah, of course, of course. I think that there's a very major lesson lies in this entire endeavor, for especially for entrepreneurs and founders, because uh, it's kind of an isolated journey, and a lot of times they have to face rejection, um, failure, or maybe no from investors, or they're not able to find the right customers in there. So I think it's a very you know if we look at the bigger picture, a very major lesson, and I think a life lesson as well, about grit and resilience. And secondly, which is my personal favorite, is cold call is not dead. It will be there even in this age, when we look at different platforms like LinkedIn and all that stuff. Cold call is never going to die. So thank you for still sticking to it, Ethan.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with that as well. I mean, I think, that's been a game changer to us, just not being afraid to pick up the phones and call people who we think would be not worthy, but just would benefit from being in our world, and that's how you have to look at it. It's not cold calling someone to ruin their day, it's calling them because you wanna share with them all of what you've learned and what you're educated on.
Exactly. Exactly. And let's look at your journey before creating Indigo Promotions. I mean, you were frustrated with late shipments and uninspired merch. How did that experience? I mean, you kind of, you were actually already running, going through the problems. When we talk about selling a product, or finding a problem, uh, something that keeps uh, maybe the customer awaken at night, or some kind of gap in there. You already were experiencing that gap. So how did this shape the way you built your company?
Yeah, I before I started Indigo, I would always run into stuff with merchandise, branded merchandise, apparel, hard goods, just anything that was being designed. And I noticed right away that there was so many small details that people had to keep up and in their mind and just like take notice of, that it was becoming harder and harder for people to deliver a good product that was exactly like their clients like. This industry, merchandise, it has only gotten more complicated as time has gone on. In the olden days, before I was even born and when this was happening, it was very simple. Everything was, hey, I need a hat and I need this logo on it, and you would make it and you would ship it to them, and that's it. And nowadays, all of a sudden, we're doing projects that have 10 different items in there. They're drop shipping to 50 different locations, some overseas. Some need to be packaged in a certain way, and some need to be have no packaging, and some need to be hand delivered and messengered to New York City. And I say that because there's so many complexities that come up that it's only getting harder to deal with all them and stay in the loop and stay on top of everything. So realizing that, that was my biggest motivation for starting Indigo, because I just felt like it was so complicated already, and I knew it was only gonna get even more complicated, and I felt like the people who were in the industry at the moment really weren't trying to stay up to date with the times, and they weren't trying to keep swinging with everything that was going on to make sure that they're keeping their company above the water and above all the trends that are happening and above all the processes that need to be implanted. So that was really the main reason I wanted to start Indigo, because I felt like I was young and hungry enough to stay up to date with all of the complexity.
Hmm. I think it kind of became your purpose.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I think for the past 5 years, we've it all what started small is quickly growing big, and it's only getting more and more important to me to deliver on the promise that I wanted to be able to make when I first got in the industry.
Mm, right. Okay, now I would like to go back to the moment, when Zappos said yes to you on the 496th call. How did you handle the pressure of having your first and only client be such a big name? Because if I were in that particular situation, first of all, for the first few minutes, I wouldn't have even processed, what just happened. And then I would have gone like, completely blacked out. What should I do? How should I approach this? I'm really anxious. I'm really, I'm really, I don't have any clue how to go ahead with this. So how did you handle it, Ethan?
I've always been the type of guy that I love biting off more than I can chew. That's just like if I had to pick a ethos for just my personal brand or how I am or how I act on a daily basis, I love biting off more than I can chew and trying to figure it out. And I think early on, that's kind of what I took to Indigo when because it was just me. It's not like I had a whole team of people and funding behind me. It was just me and my credit card and whatever I could figure out to pay for. Um, so I knew that it was gonna be a challenge because now I have this big client on my list, on my roster, and I don't necessarily know what I'm doing yet. So it was kind of funny to think about because it was this like chicken or the egg situation where I knew I needed big clients to bring in revenue, but at the same time, I also need to know what I'm doing. And it's the best kind of, feedback you can get as an entrepreneur is from clients who are actually using actually going through your business and purchasing and getting your product and receiving it on a day-to-day basis. So where Zappos was really cool is they kind of were cool with me educating myself as we built our relationship, and that I will be forever grateful for them, because it was like on the go learning. We have a project, I'm learning about the industry and everything else as the project is going on, and that type of pressure, like, it puts you in a state where you're just so hyper alert because there are other people out there that are better than you at what you're doing, and even though they're better than you have this opportunity in front of you that you have to step up to the plate with and figure out how to make work, or else you're not going to get any more opportunities. So to this day, there's still a client and they're people that I have become friends with and love them to death. And it's just all came from that one call that eventually got through.
That's really heartwarming, Ethan. And now some people here would argue that making 495 calls It's like a, and that to failed calls. It's a waste of time. That smarter entrepreneurs, they would look for some better option. They would pivot very soon. Do you think persistence is always a virtue, or it can become stubbornness?
That's a great question. I feel like one of the best pieces of advice that I got early on, even I think I even heard it before I started Indigo, was you have to do things that actually don't scale early on. And the reason why I feel like that's relevant is because nowadays, my company and my team, we don't have time to make 495 calls to no avail, but at the time, I did, and after making so many calls, I learned a lot about the process of what clients need to hear or what prospects need to hear to possibly bring you into their world. So, if I wasn't sitting around and making those calls, I feel like I would have been spread in so many other directions, and I wouldn't have been learning as fast. So, I think the fact that I was just so tunnel vision focused on making these phone calls and figuring out how to get in these doors with the phone calls and who to email and whatnot, I feel like that really helped us in the long run in the long term. So, although we can't do that nowadays, and that wouldn't be possible and it wouldn't be relevant for us, at the time, it was perfect, and doing that early on was very, very helpful for us, and, I think long term led to a lot of growth.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's it's kind of a you know, I really like that tension, because in when we talk about business, I think that the same persistence, it creates breakthroughs, that become like blueprints, uh, you know, that can also kind of blind us if we are not mindful or careful. So I think, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And also, Ethan, of course, landing Zappos, it was huge. You have, huge clients like MGM Resorts, Bloomberg, then Mac Cosmetics. These are really some big brands out there. But now, some founders, they would say that relying on big client early on, it's a risk, almost dangerous, because it can really kind of reduce our focus towards scale or growth. Do you think that gamble helped you or hurt you in the long run?
Yeah, I don't know if I see it like that, like, I
Okay.
I think it's very I think that's a surface level way of looking at business because and I'll tell you why, because I feel like at the end of the day, you have to know your product better than anybody else. You have to know your service better than anyone else. You have to know your platform better than anyone else. And regardless of who you're servicing, whether it's one client or a million different clients, if it's bad, your product, and if it's no good and if it's not doing anything to help or advance somebody's life in some way and make something easier, then you're gonna lose clients regardless. So I feel like whether they're big or small, it's almost like that didn't even drop into my mind. It was more so just perfecting our craft so that we could then choose whoever we wanted to work with, and we could then have the ability to be in whatever room we wanted to be in. And now that we're able to leverage such big companies and use their names and say we work with them and show off their projects, that alone has gotten us into different rooms with bigger, clients than even them. And I just think you gotta find a way to have a seat at the table with your ideal clients, regardless of who they are. But your product has to back you up, and then you'll get to that point where you can use it as a branching off point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a very, very fundamental and very crucial point that you mentioned in there, Ethan. And what advice would you give to founders, who dream to land with a big client with a big name in there, but they may not be ready for it?
Yeah, I think a good piece of advice that I wish I was told was definitely, yeah, it's so cool and like hip to think about landing a big client and, just, oh my gosh, I can't imagine all the orders we would get and, how fun it would be to work with such a organized team. But you have to make sure that you're organized yourself and that you have educated yourself and have built up your skills enough to be able to handle someone that is a huge client. Because sometimes you get in these doors but you shouldn't have even been there yet, and that was my situation all day long because I'd be talking to these big companies, and I barely knew what I was even speaking about in year 1 or year 2, and it's funny now looking back because I was just like, "I can't believe I was talking to them, and I thought I knew what I was doing," but I think you really have to be mindful and to a degree, be realistic with where you're at with your skills so that you know if you and your team can handle what you're targeting. Business is a tough game, it's fun and I love it, but it is a tough game that you have to there's a lot of things to master, and knowing what you can handle and what you're ready for is definitely one of them that not many people talk about much.
Wow. That's a really good one, Ethan. Really good one. Ah, great. And finally, if our listeners they would like to connect with you, Ethan, and explore more about Indigo promotions, and more, and they would like to seek more wisdom from you, what would be the easiest way?
Yeah, I love talking to people I love talking to people who have, I guess just heard me speak about really anything. And if anyone needs some type of brand assessment of where their merchandise is at today and, explain what they're trying to do and get a opinion of it from someone who's been in this industry for 5+ years, just go on Instagram, follow me at Ethan Dowie, ETHANDOWIE, and then just DM me brand consultant, and then I promise you, I will hop on a call with you. I'll figure out where your merchandise is at today and see how it's possible to level it up. So follow me on Instagram at Ethan Dowie all day long.
Super, super. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes for all of you listeners. And Ethan, thank you so, so much. I think, many of people out there, they would call that, if you're getting 1 in 100 calls conversion, then it's just sheer luck. There's no talent out there. But I do not agree. It definitely, it was a moment for you that was earned through every single rejection, no before it. So thank you so, so much for sharing your journey and wonderful, wonderful, very practical insights. And really showing us that sometimes the breakthroughs that we are chasing, they aren't far away as they feel like. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you so much for having me, Santa. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to all the listeners out there, maybe your own version of your 496th call is just around the corner. So stay patient, stay present, and keep building, keep dialing, because you never know when that one yes could change your whole story. So, thank you to everyone for tuning into this blend. Do make sure to connect with Ethan and go check out Indigo Promotions. Just refer to the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep blending grit with growth here on this blend. Thank you.